This is Gary from Empty, and you're listening to As the Story Grows.
Welcome to the next chapter of As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Before we jump into this week's episode, I want to encourage everybody to hit up asthestorygrows.com and click on the links for our mailing list and the Discord server. Discord is just modern day message boards. It's a way to connect with me and connect with other people who like the podcast to talk about new music, the podcast, comic books, movies, etc. It's a great way to connect and hang out. That's a little more organic and conversational than social media can be, especially with the way the algorithm can hide content. Also want to encourage people to join the mailing list. There's some extra insight in the mailing list about this week's podcast and my thought process and things I wanted to make sure I talked with Gary about going into the interview, some previews of some upcoming records that relate to upcoming podcast guests, and a lot of fun stuff. Joining the mailing list and joining us over on Discord are the best ways to get all the information you need on future episodes of As the Story Grows. So go to asthestorygrows.com, click on the links, check them out. Thanks. This week, we welcome Gary Spears, frontman for Solid State Records band Empty, to the podcast. Empty dropped their sophomore full-length, Made of Fire, back in October. Gary talks about the band's aspirations that led them to Solid State Records, the frustrations that come with being a non-Christian band on Solid State, and the themes and musical shifts that define Made of Fire. Gary might ruffle some feathers this week with what he has to say, but he is no stranger to upsetting people. So I hope you guys enjoy getting to know Gary Spears from Empty.
It's me you're waiting on, cause I don't wanna disappoint. Just when I thought I was through, I found my way back to you. Why do we do the things we do? I'm sick of running around in circles.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for doing this on your way to work.
Yeah, man.
It's awesome. You're in South Carolina?
Yeah, Myrtle Beach.
That's awesome. Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, I've lived here all my life.
Nice. What was growing up like for you?
I grew up right outside of Myrtle Beach in a small town called Conway. I have a super typical Southern redneck family. They all talk like this. Yeah, I grew up in like a Baptist church, and yeah. Big old jacked up trucks and fishing and hunting are things that I have seen all around.
That's awesome. How does one come to be into music and like hardcore and underground music from a scene like that?
It honestly was, I was like 13, 14. Kind of realizing that, I'm not into the whole like redneckery that Conway, South Carolina has to offer. And I had met some like kids whenever I got into like 8th grade, 9th grade, whatever, that they were into like metalcore and this like Warped Tour style music, stuff that I had never even heard in my life. And I immediately was just drawn to it. I thought this was like awesome. Like this is the most like epic thing I've ever seen in my life. And since then I became like one of the only like emo kids in Conway, and I never grew out of that.
That's awesome. Was there a scene semi-local like to Myrtle Beach or somewhere that you could dive into and be a part of?
There was. Whenever I was first getting into, like, whenever I was like 16 through 18, Myrtle Beach had like a little bit of a scene. We had a bunch of like pop punk bands around, and then I started playing in bands around that time. And in Florence, there was a couple of hardcore bands that I was really into. And it got to the point where I was driving up to like Columbia and Charlotte to go see shows. And that was like, from the time I was like 16, that was like my life, was trying to involve myself as much as I could in that scene and seeing like local bands and doing all that.
That's awesome. When you were playing in bands, what was your position of choice? Was there an instrument or vocals, or what were you drawn to?
My first ever band, like my first ever real band that I did, I played guitar. I was not good at it by any stretch of the imagination. I'm still like just good enough to like get away with playing it live, but I'm super sloppy. We were playing in that band, and I then realized I was way better at singing and doing the scream thing than I was at playing guitar. And so every band I've done subsequently since then has been me as the front man. That's
awesome. How did Empty get started?
Empty started when a few years ago, Ian, my drummer, he was playing in like a pop punk band at the time. I was playing in like a metalcore band at the time. We were both we had met each other because our bands were like playing shows together around Myrtle Beach and local areas. And we were both kind of at the point where we were like, hey, like, I don't really like the band that I'm playing in. You don't really like the band that you're playing in. Let's make something that we both like, because when we had met, we immediately like hit it off. We were into the same kind of music, like exactly. And we were like, well, nobody else in this region is doing that. So let's just start that. And then Empty was born.
That's cool. Where'd that name come from?
Ian, I'm really bad at coming up with names. Everything that I come up with, I think sounds really corny. So Ian was just making a whole list of names. I wish that the name had some like cooler, deeper meaning, but it doesn't. He was just like, hey, what if we just call it like Empty? And I was just like, yeah, that's sick. Let's roll with it. Solid State. So from the very beginning of us, like from the very beginning of Empty, the big thing that we said was that we were really into like that mid 2000s Solid State sound.
Mm-hmm.
So basically we wanted Empty just to be like a baby Underoath.
Yeah.
And that's like the guitarist that we had at the time and the bassist that we had at the time. That was all the music that we were listening to. It was just like 2003 through 2006, like post-hardcore. And so we always had Solid State in our minds. Like at the time that was like, oh, like that's the goal. Like if we could get signed to Solid State, that would be sick. But really we just started like touring our asses off from like the very get-go, because we had all been in bands before. So we knew we had connections. We knew how to like work the DIY route. And Ian, being the madman that he is, he was sending out like thousands of emails a day just to try to get us on like a tour with somebody who was a little bit bigger than us. And two of the tours that we did happened to be with like smaller Solid State bands, that being Death Therapy and To Speak of Wolves. And we did 2 weeks with To Speak of Wolves, and a few days at the end of that tour, well, like at the end of that tour, we were talking to them. We were like, yo, so like if we wanted to get signed to Solid State, like how do we do that? And we were told like, yeah, just keep grinding like a few more years and eventually they might reach out to you. So that was a little disheartening at first, because we were like, damn, like we're really busting our asses, but if that's what we got to do. A few days after that tour, we got an email that was like, hey, you guys like really know how to like tour your asses off, and you guys like grind and work, and we like your music. And we had a phone call with him, and he said that he was like, honestly, if I wasn't interested in signing with you guys, like I wouldn't have called you to begin with.
Nice.
So at that time, that was like, we were starstruck. Like that was amazing to us, because those were all like Under Oath and Oh Sleeper, which we got to tour with like right after we did our album. Like Oh Sleeper was one of my favorite bands in high school. So being on a label, like being able to be on a label with people that I had like idolized through high school is a pretty incredible experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's been some backlash, I think, to the new single. Was there ever any trepidation about joining Solid State with like, I mean, it's known for being the Christian hardcore label or metal label. Like, was there ever any like, maybe this isn't the route we want to go down?
We've thought about that. Like that has of course been a thought in our minds, because it's like, okay, maybe like this is kind of like Solid State has its like being on Solid State definitely has its good, and it kind of has a couple of cons. Like for example, like they are a super awesome supportive label, and they have given us everything that we could ask for at being as small a band that we are. But on the flip side, you have a lot of fans, and we have gotten a lot of fans just by being signed to Solid State. However, a lot of people automatically assume that we're a Christian band, and that has kind of caused some conflict for us because we're not. And anytime I do something, so like for example, just as like it's a quick word, I say fuck in the newest single.
You don't even say fuck. It's like fuck.
I don't even say fuck. Like it comes out like it cuts off. It's like fuck.
Yeah.
And people are like tripping out about it. Like it's insane. And then like, even like over the course of COVID, anytime that we have an opinion, and I think that this is like my biggest gripe with like the Christian music scene in general, is that they have a very like idealistic way, or like they think it's got to be this one way 100%. And I don't really like that, like when Christianity and conservatism are kind of like melded together. So anytime we had a opinion that we very much shared, because I'm very blunt about my opinions, and I'm not going to like hide behind it because I feel like somebody's going to be upset about what I said. But for example, like when we showed like super big support for the Black Lives Matter movement, we got a lot of backlash for that.
Which is so fucked up.
Yeah, it's so fucked up. I mean, like I posted some stuff in regards to like us supporting Black Lives Matter. And then like I looked at my Instagram the next day and I had lost 300 followers.
Man.
Like over 24 hours.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I think like Solid State for a while, like for a long time, tooth and nail, Solid State has always tried to branch out and separate themselves from being just a Christian label. But anytime they do, fans backlash, and then they like been so connected with like Christian bookstores, and as that's gone away and music has gone digital, I feel like there's freedom on the label to let bands do whatever they want, right? Like
if you ask people that like, if you ask our A&R, if you ask like anybody that works at Solid State, they're like, yeah, we're not a Christian label. Like we haven't been a Christian label in years.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, you say you're not a Christian label, but like you're still signing a lot of Christian bands, and a lot of your fan base still thinks of you as that, like as the label that you were in the early 2000s, where you only signed Christian bands.
It's the same with Under Oath, where people are still mad at Under Oath for not being Christian anymore. It's like, it's been a decade now. Like,
well, it's like, I mean, really, like even Under Oath, like how many songs did they really write about Christianity?
Right.
Like, I don't know. I just say like we're a band. Like we all have like, there's only 3 of us now, but even through all the members of Empty, we have always all had varying belief systems. And I'm not going to ostracize any sort of like demographic or fan base by saying like, oh, this is our belief. Like some people in Empty are Christian, some people aren't. Like it just is what it is.
Between the fight or flight, crown me like I'm your king. I'll be showing my teeth when you think I'm ready to fall. I'm still standing. I've been bruised and I've been broken.
Yeah. Did you have any issues with the label and like having Fuck Me on the new single on the new record, like I know at one point in the label, like they had to check band's lyrics. Like, is that something that's still happening there? Or was it just like you guys have creative freedom to do what you want?
Solid State gives us complete creative freedom to do whatever it is that we want. They had no reservations about any type of like words or language that we used on the record.
Nice.
The only time that, like, of course, they still review our songs because they're releasing it. Yeah. If they think it's a bad song, then they're going to tell us it's a bad song. But that would be the only case. They don't really control or they don't really try to tell us how to write or what style we need to be in. Whenever we had first shown him like the first few singles, he was like, wow, this is really different than what you guys released last time, but I dig it.
That's cool. Yeah. Your Solid State debut came out fall of 2019. How did COVID and 2020 affect the trajectory of the band?
Well, we had in our minds, like for releasing this current record, it's still like on track for when we wanted to release it. It's 2 years later. It is what it is. But we were basically all of our plans for 2020 and earlier this year were just to continue touring. And that was what our lives were going to be. And COVID definitely threw a wrench into us touring. And we feel like that kind of set us back a little bit because we were doing like back to back, like really good tours. We did that O Sleeper tour. A couple months later, we toured with Wolves at the Gate. Then we did a couple of DIY tours that did really well. And then all of a sudden we can't tour anymore.
Yeah.
And I think overall what really screwed us up was COVID like messed with us financially a lot because we have a website where we sell merch and everything and we do okay on there, but most of our merch sales are made at shows. So I'm not pushing a lot of merch. I'm not making a lot of money back. So it's like now we just did like a week-long tour with a band called Vagrants on Equal Vision. And we were doing our merch order. And I was like, damn, I have not paid out of pocket to like print merch in 3 years.
No.
So financially, it definitely set us back. But I will say on the pro end, because I like to look at the good side of things, it gave us a lot of time to write this record. And Hope and the Loss of It, I will say, was a very rushed album. Like we were given, from the time that we like finalized the deal to the time we went to recording, I mean, we had like a couple of months.
I think I'm losing my mind again. It feels like forever since I've gotten sleep. And I can still hear your voice, it's pounding in my head. I bet you're dreaming of someone else, 'cause looking through your eyes, I'm never enough. I'm struggling to find the point in anything.
Made of Fire's the new record. Because you had all that time to write, did that influence the change in sound, or was it something you knew you consciously wanted to do anyways?
I said from the day after we finished Hope and the Loss of It, because I was already getting out of the point where like there's still a couple of bands that I follow, but even in the process of writing Hope and the Loss of It, I had already kind of stopped listening to heavy music. And I said like days after we finished Hope and the Loss of It, the next time we write an album, it's going to sound like music that I listen to. Because I like playing this. This was fine. I was pretty like okay with how our first album turned out. It just at the end of it, I looked at it and I was like, some of this was kind of rushed. I'm happy with like some of the songs. I'm not happy with a lot of the songs, but I was like, I want to be front to back happy with our next album.
Yeah. The latest single, Close My Eyes, is about anxiety, about a panic attack. Is that something that carries through this record? Like that sort of personal lyric, like, I don't know if that comes from like 2020 and COVID and lockdown and then just like being in a place where you like have all these times with your thoughts. Like, does that come through on this record?
A lot of that will. I will say thematically, a lot of this record is lyrically introspective.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make something that people could feel like they could relate to, like off the bat. So I just wrote about things that I have, like with like Temporary High, that was about like a relationship. That was a very like, typical relationship song. So I wrote about stuff that I have dealt with in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And going through like with Close My Eyes, I wanted to write a song that was like, okay, well, like, let me write a song for everybody who's like awake at like 3 a.m. staring at their ceiling and, kind of contemplating their existence.
Lost in my mind, staring up at the ceiling, trying to fight off the feeling, like I'm just trying to run, but I keep falling behind. My time's always fleeting with
Made of Fire is one of the songs on the album, and that song particularly it kind of talks about how, or like the idea of like kind of destroying everything that you touch. Like ruining everything that you come across, any good thing that happens in your life, like you're just going to burn it down. And I felt like that, along with the fact that I thought it was a cool title, but I just felt like that idea kind of encapsulated what I was trying to get across for the album as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like I didn't really want a super like hopeful message for this album, because that just wasn't where I was at the time of writing.
Well, what's your plans? This comes out October 22nd. You guys have a Halloween show I saw. This record's coming out at a good time. Shows are back. People are touring again. What's the future of Empty look like?
As of right now, after that Halloween show, that's going to start us off for our November tour that we are doing with our label mates in Earthgroans. They just released their EP, The Body. So we are doing the Body on Fire tour for 3 weeks out west in November. And then from there, we're just going to keep touring, and we're planning on maybe doing more music next year if we find time in between touring, but we're just trying to hit the road nonstop.
Used to break my skin to make sure I wasn't dying, but I'm still trying to come to terms with whatever I think I am. I don't think I can, because I look in the mirror and I don't like what I see. Like I'm starting to be something that nobody needs. So fed up with myself. If I was someone else, I could look at my...
This album is super different. We definitely pushed a lot of barriers with this. We definitely bended a lot of genres. We kind of tried to make it something that was, we all listen to a lot of different kinds of music. So we wanted to implement all the different kinds of music that we listen to into this one album and see just how it came out. So it's different. It's wild. I hope people are open-minded about it, because if they're hoping that it sounds like the last album, they might be a little disappointed.
Yeah, I think it's a good time. I think coming out of COVID, there's so many bands and records that have come out this year, and people I've talked to where it's like there are pop elements and hip hop elements injecting itself into heavy music that like people are just like, these are our influences and we had time to create, and we're going to wear our influences on our sleeve and not try to be something that we don't like or used to be. So
right. And I hate when people, like, mostly from the fan perspective, when they're like, oh, they're just trying to like clean up their sound, they're trying to like sell out or whatever, because it's like, nah, I just don't really like listen to metalcore anymore. I listen, like, I like heavy music. I love a good breakdown. I like screaming, but I mostly listen to like pop and alternative music.
I could look in my eyes and see a streaks in my face, and if I never change, you'll go
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.
I never felt so young and alive as when I'm diving into a tune.